Hi, everyone. Welcome to Puppetize Digital. We are super excited to talk with you all today about preparing people for patching with Puppet and Plan. I'm Margaret. I'm the product manager for patch management, and I will be joined by Tony Green, principal sales engineer, and the person who created the groundwork we built our patching solution on top of. So we're going to share with you today what we've heard and what we continue to hear from you, how we can help, what problems we want to tackle next, and how to customize patching with plans. And we'll definitely leave time for Q&A at the end. So let's jump right in. Compliance and security are top of mind for so many people, if not everybody right now, especially as we navigate a more remote world. And patch management is one part of what companies need to do to keep their environment compliant and secure, and that's not an easy task. So a typical patching workflow is extremely time-consuming. It can involve teams reviewing available patches, coordinating with owners of systems, agreeing on a schedule for updates, creating the necessary ticketing and getting those change approvals, and applying the actual patch. And that could involve, going out to machines, installing the patch, making sure things worked, doing the reboot, maybe some pre-patching and post-patching tasks. So a lot of steps there. And then informing teams of the patch success or failure and confirming the job has completed and systems are back to a healthy state. And Puppet can help with many of these today, and we can tackle many of these steps in the patching workflow. So teams can review available patches in PE across operating systems, and once necessary approvals and timing are agreed upon, apply the actual patch and validate that the patch was successful, all within Puppet Enterprise. Patching is not a new problem, and this is a problem that probably all of you, or at least most of you, are very familiar with. We've heard that many people have tried solving this, by cobbling together multiple tools, processes, different teams, and probably many other things as well. Organizations are constantly trying to stay secure and keep their systems up to date, but patch management isn't a simple process. As we just walked through, applying the patch itself is just one part of the overall workflow, which involves multiple teams and various steps. And this process flow is usually planned weeks, if not months in advance. What I have here are some of the problems we hear most when talking with customers that they still struggle with today when it comes to patch management. It's time consuming, and you have a lot of other things to do other than just patching. It can still be fairly manual, which leaves room for error. Many tools are operating system specific, so you don't have visibility across your entire estate. Ensuring the right people have access to the right systems and the right permissions to take action. And ensuring that you can report on the status of patching in your environment. And the great news is we can help with about 80% of what people need to do today, and we're working on the other 20%. So Puppet Enterprise has an easy out-of-the-box workflow for patching that is the same regardless of what operating system you have and if you have a mix. With this new workflow, we're providing visibility into what patches are available on what systems and a workflow to patch systems either ad hoc or on a scheduled time. Knowing what systems have patches available can be really hard to do, especially when you're looking at multiple operating systems. And so this may involve multiple tools and teams. And now with Puppet, you get visibility out of the box for your entire estate. So we have out-of-the-box tasks that will help patch and reboot your systems, getting rid of manual steps and helping you standardize on the way that your systems are patched throughout your organization. And you can take it a step further and you can schedule patches for automated patch management. And you also have the ability to group nodes as you need so you can ensure everything is running smoothly as you apply patches throughout different environments. Ensuring everything is done securely is also super important for organizations. And Puppet's patch management is shipped with Puppet Enterprise, meaning it's backed by our robust RBAC capabilities. Patching systems is one part of patch management. Being able to report on patch status and share the status with stakeholders is another element. And with Puppet, you can easily see what patches were applied and if there are failures, and know what you need to address in order to complete the patch. And we also have data visualizations to make it easy to know when your systems are all up to date. And this is all available today. And if you're a Puppet Enterprise user, you get this out of the box. And this patching workflow can help make sure that your infrastructure remains secure and compliant. And what we've covered so far solves for roughly 80% of the challenges people face when trying to patch systems. And as Tony mentioned in last year's Puppetize talk, you have better things to do than patching. And with this workflow, we can help you get to those better things. So now that we've tackled some more of the common workflows and pain points for patching, we're focusing on the more complex stuff. So one of the things we want to do is we want to enable other teams and people to continue to patch their own systems. We're working on making the setup and management of patch groups, parameter scheduling, everything you need to do patching. We're working on making that all self-service directly from the patching page in the PE console. And we'll be abstracting away as much complexity as we can so people can jump right in and use this patching workflow. And it'll all be backed by RBAC, so the right permissions can be granted as needed. Another thing we want to improve is reporting. So while we do have reporting today, we know we can provide more robust reporting that can answer more questions for stakeholders. So we'll be working towards improved patch compliance and execution reporting. Another area we're currently exploring is integrations. Some problems we want to tackle in the future are how can we tie the patches applied to vulnerabilities and CVEs, and what can we integrate with to make your lives easier? So we know vulnerability remediation is top of mind for many customers and companies, and we are super excited about the opportunities that we have to tie together this patch management workflow and Puppet Remediate. So more to come on that in the coming months. And I've talked with many of you and heard that if we can tie into third-party tools for the approval process or for reporting and notifications, that non-Puppet users can have access to that information, and that would be really powerful and really helpful. So we want to explore what options we have there. And Tony's going to dive further into this last bullet point, but we want to make it easy to customize your patching with plans. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Tony to talk about just that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Margaret. That was a really good intro to what we're achieving with patching now and how far we've come. My name's Tony Green. As Margaret said, I'm a principal sales engineer for Puppet over in Sydney. I've been with Puppet for about a year now, but I've been a customer for an awfully long time. So I've seen things from both sides, and I come from an operational background. So I've lived and breathed this patching stuff for many, many, many years. As Margaret said, what we're trying to do here is actually take patching. We've given you the ability to actually patch now. We've made that possible. But as many of you have probably heard me say before, patching's not really just a technical problem anymore. It's a process problem. It's a visibility and reporting problem. So what we want to do is take these problems that Margaret's talked about and see how we can attack them with both the tools we have now, but also some of the tools that may be coming in the future. So we're talking about customizable patching, and as you can tell, I'm from Australia, so we spell things correctly, but I thought I'd put the Z in there anyway. What we can do with plans is take a bunch of different tasks and steps and tie them together. We can orchestrate those plans so that things work in a defined order, and we can do things the way we really want to. Rather than just say, go patch this node, we can actually do a bit more stuff around it. The flowchart is very simple. We start a patch run, we give it some inputs, and then we want to cycle around each step in the plan. Now, in this example, we're going to be doing filtering through each step. We're going to run a step, and then we're going to take the successful nodes from that step and pass them through to the next step. Any nodes that were unsuccessful for any reason, we'll log that data, but those nodes will be excluded from the next step. And then lastly, obviously, we want to output that report. We want to see what that looks like. So how do we start a patch run? Well, the good news is we've got a lot of different ways of doing it. Obviously, you can do it all through the console. The web console has the capabilities both in the default patching page to go and kick off a job, but you can also do it through the tasks or through the plans interface. We can do it from a command line. We can just use Puppet plan run and kick things off there. But most flexibly, we can do it through the orchestration API. So anything that can talk to that API, we can set that up. We've got people doing that with SharePoint and with looking at things like ServiceNow as well. In terms of the output, very similar. We can output those reports. They go by default to the Puppet console. So it's very easy to see them and consume them. We can get it from the command line. So we can run Puppet queries to actually see the results of those. There's been some really good moves and blog posts around using Power BI hooked into Puppet to be able to do reporting. And that gives you a really flexible approach. A lot of companies use Power BI and gives you a really flexible approach to be able to get that data out. And again, obviously, everything we do can be output as JSON. So we can get that out of the reporting API as well. So we've got, in terms of inputs and outputs, we've got amazing flexibility with the Puppet RBAC system, with the orchestration API to be able to actually trigger these runs, and then we can track the outputs. But what about that middle step? Step 2 is always where the interesting stuff happens. So here's an example of snippets of a plan that I use. This plan effectively will take one parameter. It takes a parameter called patch group. Patch group is what we use in PE patch to be able to assign nodes to a specific group. It's a free text field. It can be whatever it wants. Obviously, a lot of people will use things like week 1 Sunday, week 2 Wednesday, whatever it may be. This step, we take the output of a Puppet DB query. So we actually say in here, give me all cert names where PE patch group equals what we fed in this case, week 1, that package update count is greater than 1, meaning there are patches available, and patching blocked is false. So we're just pulling out the information here of all nodes in that patch group that are eligible for patching that are not blocked. That gives us a really good starting point. Step 2, we're going to run some tasks. So in this instance, we're going to run a task from the Puppet health check module that will actually double check that the Puppet agent on the node is configured how you expect it to be configured, that Puppet is running recently, and that the reports aren't failing. We see here it takes the input over, it takes a target list of targets, which was the input from the previous step, and catch errors is true. The catch errors bit is important there because what we can do then is filter these the results of these tasks to see success and failure. So here we're saying run the health check and make sure we catch those errors. In each of these steps, what we're doing is any failures that happen, we put into a separate area of the report that say, these passed or these failed agent health checks, and then we go down to the next step. Next step in this one is to actually run Puppet, because a lot of the patching infrastructure is driven from how things work on Puppet. So facts being available and classification being in place. We want, as part of this plan, I want to make sure the Puppet has actually run and a node is relative here that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So again, we run Puppet and we make sure we catch any errors there. So any nodes that fail a Puppet run, they don't proceed to the next step. Any that succeed their Puppet run do proceed to the next step. This step, really, really useful. What we're doing here is saying we have a predefined script in place. This is actually taken from the Encore patching script that Nick wrote, and it's really, really useful. What it does is say, okay, I'm going to have a script in, for example, in Linux and use a local bin and say called Prepatching. And if that script exists, run it. If it doesn't exist, don't worry, because maybe it doesn't have a pre-patching script. But this gives you the ability, both pre and post-patching, to be able to run custom steps. You can have account teams or application owners populate these scripts with the standard processes they want to start up and to shut down and start up their environments to make sure things are working. And again, all they need to remember is exit 0 means good. Exit non-zero, not good. That node won't proceed to the next step. massive amounts of flexibility there. And again, because this step only executes that script if that script exists, it's easy to put in there and then gradually converge your fleet into starting using this sort of structure. And remember, these tasks are actually really useful outside of the overall structure of what we're looking at here in plans, because you can have a health check script in place for your application that can also be run outside of the patching structure. So these steps can be used independently. Then, obviously, the meat of the plan. We're actually going to go and patch the servers. So anything that's past the last 3 steps, we'll then go and actually execute a patch run on. Now, obviously, we're assuming that when we get to this point, the nodes are healthy, patching isn't blocked, so we should be able to do the patching, and if necessary, if it's configured to do so, do the reboots. But those safety measures are still in place. If for any reason patching blocked is triggered to yes during that time frame, the patch service task will still catch that. And again, we've got catch error set to true, which means we're going to catch any issues that come up and report them out. Depending on how your task is configured, most people will be rebooting their nodes during patching. Some people don't. We have a wait until available process here so that we can wait up to 5 minutes for at the end of the previous task for the nodes to become available. That means any nodes that have actually rebooted should be back up and running then. Any nodes that didn't reboot will be available anyway. And now we start going through things in reverse. We now do the post update. So in the same way that we had the pre-update script to do health checks and perhaps shut down applications, we now have a post-update to do, again, some health checks and to start things up again. Each of these, again, is just working on the successful nodes from the previous step. So you're making sure that things are only being touched if the last step worked. And lastly, we do a final Puppet run. Make sure everything is working and make sure that things look and feel exactly as they're supposed to. In terms of the updates, this is what you see in terms of reporting. We see at the top there, tells you what patch group it is. The first item there, all nodes in group, that tells you every node that's associated with that patch group. The second entry there is patchable nodes. So of that list of nodes that were in the group, which ones had patches available and actually were able to be patched because they weren't blocked. Then we drop down that list to say, did any of them fail their node health checks, their Puppet health checks, their pre-update checks, their patching checks, post-update. Now we see here, we have a final one that failed a post-check, failed. The CentOS 7 development machine there failed its post-check. So we're out of the 6 total machines that were in the group, 4 of them had patches available, and 3 of them passed the entire process. 1 of them failed. And we can see right down there at the very bottom, we have a summary count as well. So all of this information is available through the reporting API. So it's very easy for you to dive in using a reporting system to actually visualize the success and failure of the patch run. If you want to drive this through the console, again, exactly the same information. You get step-by-step output of every single command and an overview of the actual plan itself. What the individual reports show within there is the output of the tasks themselves. So when you want to see what happened, you can dive into those individual events and actually see specific details. The actual plan itself, I've put up online. It's a gist. It's a work in progress, and we are figuring out some extra stuff we can do with it. But it shows you the power of taking the core essence of plans and showing them how they can work to do things like a complex infrastructure like patching within the Puppet ecosystem. I think that's a really strong use case, and we've seen a lot of people making massive headway with how they manage their environment, not just from patching, but being able to do clean shutdowns, clean startups, patching things in order. You can because you can wrap a plan in another plan. So you can actually say, my first plan here is to patch my development environment. And if everything in my development environment patches cleanly, then move forward and patch my production environment. And they use the same plans. You just feed in different information, and it takes the success of the first plan to trigger the running of the second plan. So, on behalf of Margaret and myself, thank you very much for watching the presentation. I hope you found it useful. We're going to have a Q&A now. Our email addresses are there, and obviously we're available on the Puppet Community Slack as well, should you have any questions. But I appreciate your time and hope you have a good rest of Puppetize.